I want you to consider something for a moment. Per the work done by retired police major Dr. Travis Yates, who studied a major municipal police agency, 76% of the participants cited a lack of morale within the agency, and 71% of the participants cited a lack of communication within the agency. Now, I'm not here to undermine certain stressors that can happen on the job, such as experiencing trauma, violent encounters, rotating shifts, and other things as well. But one of the most obvious and most draining is when a police officer reports to work at a department where there's a lack of leadership and there's toxicity within the four walls. And it's not at every place, but here to have some real talk about this issue is Dr. Travis Yates himself. Let's get right into it. Well, Travis, how much does lack of leadership affect an officer's mental health and their job satisfaction?
I'll put it to you this way, and I'll try to be as succinct as possible. It's why I do what I do. It's everything. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but it's got to be in the 99% point something percent. But when you talk about organizational stress and things that happen, cops aren't worried about the bad guys. Cops aren't worried about the politicians. Cops aren't worried about YouTube or the activists. They're worried about who they're working for. The stress that they are encountering, and I speak to cops every day, the stress they're talking about is not any of that. It is the people they're working around. There's a tremendous amount of distrust with leadership in law enforcement. Doesn't mean, I'm speaking general terms, doesn't mean there's not good leaders. That's why you and I do what we do. We're trying to build leaders. But 20 years ago, I probably would have said, hey man, we need good leadership because we've got to carry out the mission and we've got to do good customer service and all these general business leadership type ideals. No, it has become to the forefront where if we do not improve leadership and get away from the toxicity, our profession is being eliminated. I don't know if anybody's paying attention, but I mean, we have most major city departments are down 20, 25, 30% in personnel. You're going to have, if we don't change, the first major police department literally go out of business. I mean, we already see police departments contracting with sheriff's departments now as they can't fill the beats. And we're all and these toxic leaders are going, oh, it's just a crisis. Oh, it's just this. Oh, it's just that. Blaming everybody, but looking in the mirror. And I'm telling you, I've been in departments where they've got leadership right. And it's like Disneyland, man. It's the way the job, what everybody anticipates the way it is. It's what they tell you it is in the academy. It's what they tell you is before you go to work for that department. And it is awesome, the best job on the planet. Then I've been in departments to where the leadership is toxic, and it's like being at a funeral. The only reason you see some agencies that still exist today is because of the retirement system. You've got guys and gals that have been there 10, 15 years, and they're just trying to get to that magical number, right, so they can leave. But it is pure torture, and some of the data is bearing that out.
You mentioned some agencies are doing the right thing, and it's great, but then some toxic as can be. You've spoken about this before because I saw it on your website, saw you post a video about it on LinkedIn. The differences we're seeing between sheriff's offices and municipal agencies. Can you dive into that?
Yeah, and it doesn't mean every sheriff's department's perfect or every municipal agency is horrible. But, I'm just going off. I've been on the road for 25 years, Scott. I've been in 47 states, 3 countries. I've talked to thousands and thousands of cops. I'm just kind of going off that experience, right? Everybody talks about politics shouldn't be in law enforcement, but obviously politics plays a role. And the sheriff is actually a political figure. But oddly enough, I think most people listening to this can probably go, well, yeah, this sheriff's department, we're not seeing the issues in these sheriff's departments because from a political standpoint, that sheriff is trying to hone in on the mission, right? And our mission is so simple, Scott, it's in our name, law enforcement, right? So the mission of law enforcement is simple and basic. Some of the best cultures in organizations are simple. You look at Southwest Airlines, man, it's simple. Take care of employees, take care of customers. I mean, it's simplicity. In-N-Out Burger, I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but they serve like 3 things, right? A burger, fries, and a drink. And they don't get away from that mission. Law enforcement, particularly in municipal ranks, they're worried about everything but the mission, but crime. See, sheriffs, they know if they don't take care of the mission, they're getting voted out because I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, blue, white, brown, red, whatever. Everybody wants to live in a safe environment, and sheriffs typically understand that, and they hone in on the mission because they want to keep their election. Meanwhile, the municipal side, I want anybody listening to this, I challenge you. Find me one municipal police chief that's been fired because of crime. One. Like I have looked for years, haven't found one that said we're firing this chief because the crime rate is exploded. No, municipal chiefs, they hone in, they want to keep their job with the mayor of the city council because they're worried about things that they're worried about, which typically isn't crime, which is everything else. And that's why you've seen a complete decay in municipal law enforcement, particularly your mid to larger cities. A lot of your smaller communities still have mission focused centric, but particularly your larger cities, you're seeing a decay in it because they're away from the mission because they're worried about everything but the actual mission, Scott.
To anyone who's listening and they're either interested in getting into law enforcement or they're new to the job, what would you say that they need to do when they step into the career and how to navigate sometimes, particularly when they run into toxic management and stuff like that?
First off, it's the greatest career on the planet. I mean, all the stuff that Hollywood makes and real life TV, you get to live it, right? It's hard to describe it to people that haven't done the job. It is one of the greatest jobs on the planet. But you have to ensure that the environment you're going into is one that's conducive to that. And don't believe the recruiting materials, right? Don't believe the marketing materials. You need to number one, find a community that is supportive of law enforcement, because that's the key. That may not be the department you're thinking of. Doesn't matter. You got to think about this long term, right? Will I be happy in 10, 15, 20 years? And that's why we're seeing really, it's on a high level. We're seeing people get into this job, they're leaving with 4 or 5 years. And that never used to happen. You know, we're seeing people in large municipal agencies with good pension going to sheriff's departments, going to state police, leaving that department. You don't want to be that. If you want to start your time and you want to spend your career there, so you got to do some prep work. Don't trust the recruiter, so to speak, because their job is to get you there. Talk to the people inside that department, not just one, but multiple people. Go on a ride along. You know, not just one, multiple ride-alongs, right? Because you want to get an overall picture of what you're walking into, right? You don't want to be there 3 years and go, oh man, I may have made a mistake. Now keep this in mind, Scott. Even the best departments are going to have some poor leaders, right? There's enough leadership in those agencies to where overall it's going to be, it's either going to be overall good, overall bad. So not everybody's going to be perfect. So keep that in mind. You may, this one department's got a bad sergeant. So there's 25 others that are just fine. So you can't really worry about that. But you need to really find out, number one, does this community overall respect law and order, respect the mission? Hit up Google News, search the news in that city, right? You'll see real quick if there's 4 crazy people on city council that you got that you may not think affects you, but it does, because it affects the chief and it affects the command level and it affects all the way down in the agency. So just do some research on it, talk to people inside the agency, understand who the community is. So it's very dicey. Let's say you're on the East Coast and you're going to go out and work on the West Coast. I mean, you may not know much about that community, but hit Google up and search around and find out. Every department out there wants to hire you. So since this time in history, you have an opportunity to sort of pick where you want to go, and that's what you want to do.
Yeah, no place is perfect. But you do have places that are going pretty well. But you're going to have your disgruntled officers within that group, and they can convince particularly newer officers that it's not a good place to work for, when in fact it could be. It's just up to the decision of the. So I fell for that my first year. I really did. But my thing is, I still want to focus on, what you're speaking on, the lack of leadership and stuff like that. So what are signs of toxic leadership that someone should be on the lookout for, in addition to just being aware of, the disgruntled crowd, which you're going to have at every PD?
Well, there's 2 different answers here. So first is an answer if you're not inside the organization. It's hard to know that, but there's some telltale signs. First off, I want to know what their recruiting and retention is, right? I want you to ask the recruiter that question. How many officers are you down? Oh, yeah. Then on the answer, then say, why are you down that much? Listen to their answer. Because if they tell you, it's just down everywhere, that's an indication that they're not acknowledging the real reasons. Because I'm telling you, Scott, there's departments in this country that are not down because people want to work there, right? The recruiting crisis is more about leadership and the decisions being made than anything else. That's just what it is. And I work for a recruiting company. I know for a fact there is not a shortage of people that want to go into this job. But there's a shortage of agencies that people want to work for, so to speak. So if you're going to work for an agency and man, they don't really, we don't really have a recruiting problem. We're down 4 or 5. It's just attrition. Overall, something's going right, because people leave toxic environments, right? The leadership left in, they'll leave those environments, and then find out their retention. How many people stay till retirement? Find out those answers. So from an outsider, you're going to get a lot of indications of why that is and dive into that. Now, if you're inside the department, You may be miserable and you don't know why, but you have to sort of look around. There's a couple of indicators to understand this. So for instance, are you a policy consumer, but you're the last to see the policy? It just comes out, tells you what to do. Right? There's no feedback mechanism. That's pretty odd. Are you concerned about communicating with your superiors or with the chief? Are you concerned about reprisal? Or is your creativity been stymied? Like, do you have ideas, but nobody wants to listen to it? So there's a lot of things inside a department I could talk about, but focusing coming into the department, look at the data, look at the metrics. Departments that are down significantly, departments that have a retention issue, leadership's the issue. They're going to deny that. That is the issue, is leadership. And you need to ask yourself, how long has that been going on? You know, did this just start 3 years ago? Well, what's changed? Oh, they got a new chief. Oh, they got a new sheriff. Just try to understand that.
I had a comment the other day on my YouTube channel, basically to the effect of cops operating with hands tied behind their backs. And I've seen it before where police officers are hesitant to use force when it is needed. They were within the law, they were within policy, and they froze because they're so scared of what the admin might do. Any advice to them? Because I don't want someone to get hurt. I don't want an officer to freeze and an innocent person get hurt because they're so scared about getting in trouble. So I think this is something worth talking about.
Well, we're seeing it. I teach an entire course on this called Seconds for Survival. So I see videos every day of hesitation. And I understand why. Sometimes that hesitation may be because just a perception that's not a reality, or it may be a reality. So I need those officers to understand what reality is, right? Because you could watch the news and think, oh my gosh, I'm going to use force and people are going to go crazy, but that may not be the reality for you. If it's a reality, you got a problem, right? You cannot go out there every day thinking you're going to try to avoid force, because that's when the worst thing is going to happen, right? And so first, couple things to think about. What type of training is the agency giving you, right? I teach a class on human behavior patterns and predicting force before it happens. Officers tell me they don't get to come to the class. Their chiefs or sheriffs don't let them. That's a sign that they're not providing you proper training, right? Yeah. The other sign is you need to go and see what's happened in your agency. As other people use force and something's happened to them and it shouldn't have, right? So there's a history in your agency. So that's the reality of it. And the other reality is simply ask, hey, here's the policy. If I follow this policy, what are you going to do? And I don't necessarily recommend this to everybody. It probably depends on your situation, but I love getting signatures from my chief or sheriff saying, if I follow this policy, will you back me up? Sign here. I mean, by the way, if a chief or sheriff wants to back you up, why would they have a problem signing that? So, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially with the environment, to go, hey, chief, hey, sheriff, hey, sergeant, I'm nervous, man. I'm seeing what's going on around law enforcement in the communities today. If I follow this policy, are you going to back me up? Oh, sure. Okay, well, why don't you sign this for me just so I kind of make my wife feel better, make me feel better? If they refuse to sign that, Scott, that's a sign, right? Because I would have no issue whatsoever signing that, because I know I'm telling the truth. So that may be more of a radical thing to do. Be careful about that one, depending on where you're at. But I think history tells us the future. So look around your agency, what's happened in the past. That's how you make the decision. Be careful about letting the perception of social media or the environment of the political culture today influence you, because this is life and death, right? We're not baseball players, Scott. We can't go 3 for 10 and make it to Hall of Fame. We are asking you in methods of tactics that you cannot make a mistake. You cannot hesitate. In fact, my class called Seconds for Survival is called it because of this. The Department of Justice, when they used to do research for us back about 10 years ago, they did a study that said the average violent encounter lasts 3 to 5 seconds with us and suspects. Our average reaction time is 5 to 7 seconds. So that means we lose. A lot of times we shouldn't be losing because we're waiting too long. And so I think you need to just understand what reality is and perception.
Well, let me ask you this, for any police officer who's new to the career, or anyone who's just listening and they want to be that leader to make a big impact and be that caring leader, not part of the toxic management problem that a lot of departments can face. What leadership advice do you give to those moving forward? Because we do have to focus on the future and taking action for that.
Let me first say this. Everybody listening to this is a leader. You have to believe that. Maybe you work in an environment where you don't understand that, or you've been told that that's not the case. No, that's from the beginning of time. Every single person has had leadership responsibilities, whether it's your home, your church, your department, whatever it is. There are people that look up to you. Maybe it's just people in the community. Maybe it's people in your squad. you cannot let toxic leadership affect your leadership. You have to first lead yourself first, take care of yourself, and then take care of those around you. It's really that simple. People, whether you know it or not, it's like you don't know your kids are watching you as they're growing up, but then they get older, you kind of think, man, they're kind of acting like me. You don't realize that. People are watching you, whether you know it or not. You have to take a really deep responsibility for that. And so that's tough to do if you're in a bad environment. Hopefully you're not. But if you are, you have to somehow isolate yourself from that and go, it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what that person does or that chief or sheriff does. I control me, right? So what can I learn? What can I do? How can I get 1% better each and every week to show people there is hope? Because leaders deal in hope, Scott. And the power of one person can change the dynamics of the agency. You don't believe me? Well, everything that we love today started with one. There was one person at one time that said, I'm going to put millions of songs on a little bitty square device. I'm going to make a cell phone more powerful than the first spaceship that went up to space and to the moon, if you believe that nonsense. You know, there's one person that came up with this stuff that had the confidence and the integrity to go, it doesn't matter what people say. They may call me crazy. They may call me nuts. They may say, why are you doing it this way? You're not going to get promoted if you do that. No, you reject all that and you go, I'm going to be the best possible version of me I can be. People will see that. They'll know that I'm doing something that most people don't do. Commit to be that unicorn, Scott. Commit to be what nobody else is around you. Be the best, because folks, we have one chance, right? Whether you know it or not, you got one chance in your job, in your life, in your marriage, in your family to do it right. None of us are perfect. Only one person's been perfect. So I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just asking you to get up every day and go, let's give it a shot today. Let's do everything I possibly can to be the best version of myself.
And the effort is 100% worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And listen, it gets discouraging because there were times in my career where I looked around and went, man, I'm in the middle of the devil's den here. I mean, these are the most horrible people I've ever been around, but you can't let that affect you, right? You've got to just, because there's always going to be pockets of people that look to you. It doesn't matter what the chief's doing or the sergeant's doing. They're looking to you and you have to rise to the occasion.
100%. Thank you, Travis, so much. If someone wants to reach out to you for training or just get in touch with you, get your book, where can they find all that?
It's real easy. Go to travisyates.org. Don't go to .com. It's going to be not me for sure, but go to .org. And it branches you off. I do weekly podcasts, weekly articles. You can subscribe to all that stuff. Books on there. Everything's on there. Just plug your email in and we'll keep you up to date.